Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. What if you had a special quality within you that could take you from a bad mood to a good mood in a matter of seconds? What if you had a special friend that you could always depend on to help you through the tough times? What if you had a special power within you that could actually create miraculous happenings in your life? Well, I'm here to tell you today that you do have that special quality, you do have that special friend, and we all have that special power. It's called your humor being. I know, folks, I did stand-up comedy for over 25 years. I headlined comedy clubs and theaters and colleges throughout the country. I even had my own Showtime special, and I am not saying any of this to impress you, but simply to impress upon you every single time, I mean every single time I was on that stage, I was well aware that there were people in the audience who were experiencing challenging times of some kind. Maybe they were going through a divorce, having financial difficulties, maybe it was work-related problems, maybe they or a loved one were inflicted with some kind of illness. But for those few hours in that comedy club, their challenges, their problems, whatever they were, didn't own them. Why? Because they simply allowed themselves to take time out to laugh. Laughter is the pit stop in the rat race of life, and that it gives you enough emotional fuel and repairs to get back into the race again. But the proficiency and the initiative in which you allow yourself to laugh comes from what I call your humor being. I believe everyone on this planet is born with their own internal humor being. Unfortunately, most people go their entire lives never knowing they have this power, let alone how to tap into it and make it work for them. Your humor being is of your higher self. It is a part of you that brings out the best in you when times get really tough. What your humor being can give you more than anything else is emotional stability. I'm going to tell you, I was voted least likely to succeed in my senior class in high school, okay? Really, that wasn't a joke, but thanks. I was voted least likely to succeed, my senior class in high school. And it was that type of negative labeling that molded the direction for most of my life. And one day I went on a quest to better myself, and I'm here to tell you that one of the strategies that helped me to turn those toxic labels around was my humor being. And another thing my humor being helped me with was to deal with the stereotype of being from New York. I traveled all over the place, and I was amazed when I started traveling how many people have negative opinions about New Yorkers. They're rude, they have an attitude, they're sarcastic, all they think about is themselves, they curse a lot. Okay, a lot of New Yorkers do curse a lot. They can't help it, certain words are adjectives to them, okay? Okay, when I was going to college, I was in a history class with a friend of mine who was from Brooklyn, and the professor was talking about when Argentina attacked the Falkland Islands. My friend stands up and goes, "Excuse me, professor, what Falkland Islands are you talking about?" So the professor's like, "I don't think you understand." He's going, "Hey, no, I don't think you understand. I ask you a question, I gotta know what Falkland Islands you're talking about. You might not know this, but there's Falkland Islands all over the place. What am I supposed to put on the test for crying out loud?" So the professor's like, "Calm down, listen to me, there's only one Falkland Island." He's like, "Hey, moron, look at the map. You see those little pieces of dirt floating around in the water there? You know what they are? They're Falkland Islands. You got the Hawaiian Falkland Islands, the Bermuda Falkland Islands, the Caribbean Falkland Islands, and somewhere on there, you got Gilligan's Falkland Island." See how much better you feel now that you're laughing? That's what, give yourselves a big round of applause for doing that, too. That's what it's about. There was a point in my comedy career where I started witnessing firsthand the positive, if not miraculous, effects that humor had in people's lives. I know that word miraculous is a very powerful word to use, but if you think about it, sometimes in life, what is a miracle? Nothing but a shift in perception. It's looking at something where at one point you're saying, "This is absolutely impossible for me to achieve," or "I'm not going to be able to handle this." But then all of a sudden, with a shift, even a slight shift in the way that you're thinking, that impossibility suddenly becomes very possible. And this is where your humor being comes into play, because humor nips negative thought patterns in the bud before emotional havoc blossoms, leaving you in a healthier state of mind, which propels you and allows you to make sounder, wiser, more productive choices. And here's a perfect example. Follow me on this true story that took place in the middle of my comedy career years ago, where my humor being came to the rescue and turned a totally stressful situation into the ultimate success story. I was in New York City. That sets it up pretty well right there. I was in New York City. I had a rental car that kept breaking down. It was 98 degrees. Air conditioning isn't working, sweat's pouring down my face. It seemed like I was in the world's biggest traffic jam, and every New Yorker on the planet was beeping the horns and cursing at me. If you've ever been to New York City, you know that's not a very comfortable feeling at all. But to make matters worse, I was already 20 minutes late for a very important audition. And I'm feeling this massive snowball of negativity building up, and I'm like, oh man, what else could possibly happen? Don't ever ask that question. Because if you do, the universe will answer you, and it did. I drive up to the toll booth, and I went to pay the guy, and I realized I left my wallet at the rental place. I snapped. I looked at the guy, and I said, hey, I'll have a couple of burgers, 2 fries, and get something for yourself there, Sparky. This guy looks at me with the biggest smile on his face with a typical New York attitude and says, hey, you want me to supersize those fries there, tough guy? So I gave him the same attitude back. Yeah, that's a good idea. Supersize those babies for me. He goes, yeah, it is a good idea, but unfortunately, we don't have food here. I said, well, then you better get it because you're holding up traffic. Now we're both starting to laugh, but all the cars in back of me, they're beeping the horns, they're cursing. Come on, move it. What's going on over there? That's when my newfound friend in the toll booth sticks his head out of the booth, motions to all of the other cars and says, hey, we ran out of food. It happens. Try the next booth. Try the next booth. By then, we were high-fiving each other. We became best friends in 30 seconds. You want to know what the coolest thing was? He let me go without paying. He looked at me and said, hey, it looks like you're having a tough time here, pal. Don't worry about it. I got you covered. This toll is on me. Get out of here. And thank you, thank you, thank you. I said, what are you thanking me for? He says, you need to understand, I'm pretty new in this area. This is only my 2nd day in the job. Believe me when I tell you, I really needed to laugh today. And I looked at him and I said, oh, geez, help me, Lord, so did I. Folks, here's the point, and a very important point. I drove away from that toll booth in a totally different state of mind. As a result, at that moment, I was able to plant positive thoughts in my head, constructive ways, on how I could deal with this very important audition that I had coming up. Guess what? I kicked butt. I had a great audition. I even visualized how I wanted this thing to go. And it's a good thing I had a great audition because it led to the most important break in my comedy career. That's how I got my very first TV special, my Showtime special. And that special paved the way for every other TV appearance that I ever made. Let me ask you this question. What do you think would have happened if I would have gone into that audition in the mood that I was in before the toll booth incident? I wouldn't have had a chance. Not in the mood that I was in. And I tried everything in my power to turn this thing around, but it wasn't working. And I realized years later, when I reflected back, it's only when I started laughing was I able to think positive. Now, why is that? Here's the psychology behind this. When you allow yourself to laugh in the midst of a stressful situation, your brain is no longer focusing on that stressful situation because your brain can only focus on one thing at a time. Right now, your brain is laughing at something ridiculous or absurd that you just did. And even if your brain does go back to that stressful situation, which it probably will do, but here's the cool thing. It won't be as overwhelming as it was before. Why? Because you've calmed your nervous system down to the point where you are in control of the situation rather than having that situation control you. At that particular moment in my life, my humor being came to the rescue, and in a matter of seconds, there was a major shift in my attitude. And you know what? Sometimes a couple of seconds is all you need to catch your second wind. Sometimes a couple of seconds is all you need to get up from off the ground, jump back into the game again. Your humor being gives you those few seconds over and over again. It gives you the unstoppable attitude that you need to persevere regardless of your circumstances. And speaking of attitude, May 3rd, 2004, I had the pleasure of meeting one of the most incredible humor beings I've ever met in my life, Christopher Reeve. This was 5 months before Christopher Reeve passed away. Chris and I were both keynote speakers at the San Diego Convention Center. I was the opening keynote, Chris was the closing keynote. And for those of you that need a refresher, Christopher Reeve was the first actor to play the role of Superman in the movies, and this was in the early 80s. And his career came to a complete halt when he was suddenly paralyzed from the neck down as a result of a horseback riding competition. And when I got off the stage that day, Dana Reeve, his wife, approached me, and I never met her before, and she runs up to me, she gives me a big hug and a kiss on the cheek. She goes, "Oh my God, that was so wonderful. Chris would love to meet you. Do you have time?" And I said, "I would be honored." Apparently, Chris, Dana, and a few other people saw my entire performance on a TV screen in the green room where Chris was waiting. And I have to tell you, when I met him, it was a total reality check. Because when you hear about someone in that condition, that's one thing. But when you see it, it's a totally different vibe. The only parts of his body that this man could move were his lips, his eyes, and his eyebrows. And he greeted me with the biggest smile, and he said, "Steve Rizzo, thank you so much for taking the time to visit with me. I just have to tell you how much I appreciated what you said up there, especially about starting your day with an unstoppable attitude and persevering regardless of what other people think." He goes, "I live by that philosophy. But the thing that really touched me," he said, "when you talked about your humor being," he goes, "Steve, I have to tell you that my humor being was the most important strategy to help me embrace this change that took place in my life. It gave me a sense of normalcy and balance in my life." Now, if you were to read, by the way, you know what, folks? What he said humbled me like you wouldn't believe. And to this day, it's the best compliment I ever received, because hearing it from him just solidified what I was doing was contributing somehow. And if you ever read his book, Nothing's Impossible, and he wrote this book a couple of years after he was paralyzed, the whole book is about persevering regardless of what people say. Have that unstoppable attitude regardless of your circumstances. And there's a part in that book where he says jokes about being in the wheelchair helped him to diffuse the anger and the fear about living in a wheelchair. And every time he would approach the dinner table or the breakfast table, sometimes he would have to park his chair and he'd hit the table or a chair, and the family would all lift up their plates and glasses and go, "Gangway, here comes the crazy driver." And he said it just made him feel like part of the family. When he was on the Letterman show, Letterman asked him, "How you doing?" He goes, "I'm doing pretty good, but I think I broke my neck again riding over the potholes in this damn city of yours." Letterman laughed, the audience laughed, and it made way for a really good interview. The point I'm making here is that it was these types of wisecracks, these types of jokes that helped this superhuman being from falling prey for the devastating consequences of negative thinking. And had he held on to those thoughts that were trying to tell him of what he no longer could be, he more than likely would have been paralyzed more than just physically, but emotionally, mentally, and spiritually as well. And he told me later on that day, he said, "You know what, Steve? Sometimes finding the humor isn't easy." But he had a profound feeling, an understanding deep within him that that's when he needed it most. And he used that phrase again. He goes, "That's when I made a conscious choice to allow my humor being to become a part of who I am." And it was that innate ability that helped him and propelled him to make that shift to actually literally laugh in the face of fear, which is the thing that motivated him and helped him to achieve so much of what he did achieve in his lifetime. I think Mark Twain said it best: "Not even fear can stand against the assault of laughter." And as I said, he passed away 5 months after I met him, but that's not what's important. The reason why I'm telling you this story, what's important, folks, is what we do on this planet with the time that is allotted us. And I want to tell you what Christopher Reeve accomplished in those last 9 years of his life falls nothing short of miraculous. He accomplished more in those 9 years than most people I know, and I know a lot of people, could accomplish in a lifetime. And he did it in that condition. And he claimed that his sense of humor, his humor being, was a major catalyst, a major strategy that helped him to do that. Now, before I leave, I want you to do these two things. Number one, right now, acknowledge that you have a humor being within you. Number two, I want you to make it a part of who you are. And you do this by every day allowing yourself to see the humor and the laughter that is around you. The more you do this, the more it becomes a part of who you are. I want to tell you something. If you say you can't find something to laugh at, you're not looking. You want something real funny to laugh at? Try this first thing in the morning. Look at yourself first thing in the morning. No, really, don't even get dressed. Look into a full-length mirror, butt crack naked, and go, "I'm ready to go." How many married people out there? Married people? Come on. Oh, yeah, there's humor there. There's humor there. As a matter of fact, I think a sense of humor is the key to a healthy marriage. But if you were to read Oprah Magazine would tell you that the key to a healthy marriage is to simply understand your partner. Are you kidding me? Have you ever tried to do that? Understand your partner, man or woman? Folks, listen to me. You will never, ever be able to understand your partner. The only thing that you have to understand about your partner is that there are things about your partner that you will never understand. And if you can understand that, you will have a better understanding. Do you understand? I was married to my wife for over 30 years. To this day, I could never understand why I had to get in trouble for dreams that she had. How many people have children? Children out there? They're the funniest people on the face of the planet. Why do we not take advantage of this? One of the funniest things about kids is watch how your kids grow up to be just like you. My son thinks he's a comedian. Now, he's really funny, but when he was in elementary school, we had a problem because he was getting in trouble. He was disrupting the class. He didn't know when to stop. He kept thinking he was on stage performing. One time he came home from school. I said, "Hey, how was school?" He said, "Good crowd, good crowd." I said, "Don't get smart with me." He said, "Don't worry, I don't want to confuse you." He even does impressions. First day of school, the teacher said, "So, young man, what's your name?" And he went, "Well, what's it to you, lady?" The principal gave me a call the next day and said, "Mr. Rizzo, we have another problem. Now your son thinks he's Jack Nicholson." And I'm like, "What the hell you want me to do?" How many people go to a gym? How many people work out, go to the gym? Oh, man, I'll tell you what. If you don't, get a membership to a gym. Don't even work out. Just sit there and laugh. There's so many funny people there. There's a gym where I work out on Long Island, and there's a bodybuilder that comes in there all the time. And this guy has a perfect body. He's like 6'5", 250 pounds. He's like maybe 27 years old. And when he works out, he's by himself. He never talks to anybody. And he has the headphones, in his, and you can hear his music blasting as he's doing it. And he's like a solid rock. But the thing that cracks me up is that every time he lifts something, I'm not kidding you, he sounds like the lion from The Wizard of Oz. And like if he's curling, you'll hear him go. And when he does this, my friends give me the cue. That's my cue. So when he goes on the bench press and he can't see me, and he's bench pressing a lot of weight, he's going, and I'm in back of him going, I can't lift all that weight. I'm gonna hate myself. Yeah, you laugh. If he ever finds out, it'd probably be bench pressing me, so. Folks, here's my point. I am not claiming here that your humor being is a cure-all for all your problems. But what I am saying is that your humor being can place you at the helm to steer the course of your life with equanimity when the storms of misfortune, change, and negativity are pouring down on you. It's one of the greatest gifts that was ever given you. What good is a gift if you don't open it and use it? I hope I was able to help you, a wonderful audience. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. Thank you.